Wife pled guilty today and lesser charges. The Massachusetts man pleading guilty to misleading police and improper conveyance of a human body. A massive search for Anna Walshe began after her employer reported her missing back in January of 2023. Brian Walshe was arrested a few days later, charged with misleading police, and later that month he was charged with her murder. We're joined now by criminal defense attorney Joseph Tully with an update here. Joseph, walk us through what's happening here, because it's a little bit complicated. This is not a plea bargain, a deal of any sort. What exactly do we know right now where the case stands?
Okay, so I guess this is what you would say is strategy. So Mr. Walshe is charged with murder, and he was also charged with improper conveyance of a human body and misleading police investigators. What happened is he pled guilty to the two lesser charges. The murder charge will carry life. The lesser charges are around 3 years in prison is what he's looking at approximately. So he's sort of taking the things that he knows that a reasonable person would know that he's going to lose in jury trial. Basically, they can flat out prove that him guilty of those other things, in my opinion, even though he is presumed innocent and now he has pled guilty to the charges. So he took those off the table, and he's basically forcing the prosecution to solely focus on the murder charge now.
Okay, so he's essentially, at least when the judge asked him if the charge he was pleading to guilty, if he helped, if you will, dispose of the body, he's admitting guilt there. Where he's not admitting guilt is in the murder and the disappearance of his wife.
Exactly, yes. And so what that does is it does a couple things. It might take some minor issues off the table. Some evidence that might be relevant only to those charges might not come into the murder trial now. And it also, if he takes the stand in his defense at the murder trial, he'll be able to say, listen, I was guilty of disposing of the body. I was guilty of lying to the police. I'm not guilty of the murder. I admitted to what I'm guilty of already. I'm not going to admit to this murder because I'm not guilty of that. So that's where I think this is going, in my opinion.
So your sense as a defense attorney, does this make it harder for the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, now the fact that he's admitted to disposing of the body, prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed her? Is that more difficult for the government to prove now?
I think on paper, yes. On paper, you admit to the things that they can prove, because it takes away, if had he gone to trial on all three charges and they prove him guilty of the first two, the two that he's pled guilty to, then the jury might be more inclined to say, well, he was lying about these two things. He's lying about the murder as well. And now by taking that off the table, it becomes solely focused on the murder charge. However, in my view, the evidence here is very, very strong in this case, regardless of the fact that they do not have a body here. In fact, I think this might be a very rare situation where the fact that they don't have a body helps them to prove the murder case.
Okay, yeah, that of course is, we're coming up now on the 3-year anniversary of the disappearance, and to your point, no known whereabouts of Anna Walshe or her body, so unclear what exactly happened to her. The bigger question here, sentencing-wise, he's already in prison serving time for an unrelated crime related to basically selling fake art. What does it look like, what he's facing with the plea or the admittance to guilt in those charges and outside of the murder charge?
Sure. So my understanding is that the selling fraudulent art was about a 3-year sentence, and that was federal. These are state charges, and he's looking at approximately about 3 years for that. So I don't know if that will be concurrent, meaning served at the same time as his federal, or consecutive, meaning served after the federal term is done. But that also is strategic in that now the prosecution, I believe they were going to introduce evidence that the wife had said to an associate. I believe that he thinks that if he gets full custody of the children, he won't do time in federal prison. So that also might go to the motive in the murder case that the prosecution might introduce.
Yeah, I believe it's actually concurrently, so I don't know if that makes more of what you're saying here makes sense.
Yes, I mean this is kind of a convoluted case now in that you have a federal case unrelated to a murder case, and then you have lesser charges that he's pled guilty to. But I think that the case still looks very strong for the prosecution. Yeah. I think they have, in terms of a motive, again, motive is not legally required to prove in a murder case, but it helps. Yeah. So here they have, evidence of that he believed that she was having an affair. They have him, very clearly buying cleaning supplies around the time that she disappeared, and doing so in cash, wearing a mask. So I think the evidence is very strong for a murder prosecution here.
And to be clear here, the government has said they are absolutely not pleading this case out, and they're taking this to trial. So trial awaits Brian Walshe. Joseph, thanks for the update.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Let's move on now to Prince George's County Council, which has voted to end its decades-old ban on pit bull-type dogs. The change now part of a new animal control bill led by Council Chair Edward Burrows after years of work with local leaders and